Other interesting cultural news, you have Disney Plus slashing content by 40%, or just about. Now, specifically between Disney Plus and Hulu, which they own a majority share in Hulu stock, and they're going to subsequently buy out the remaining from, I believe, Comcast, they've canceled 36.3% of their shows, more than any other streaming platform. That's astronomical. Now, why would Disney have to do this? Well, quite simple. No one's tuning in. Because culturally speaking, I think they are perhaps one of the most disconnected companies on the planet. When it comes to, in business, the most important thing is to know the customer. What is your customer looking for? What are their values? What do they need from a product or your service? How can you increase the relationship? How can you give them more of what they want? Some things might tank the company depending on what demographic, geographically. There are many things that go into the makeup of what your customer base is. And in some cases, you want everyone to be your customer. You're not going for a niche market, you're going for a mass market. Think of a company that sells perhaps water. Although, given the politics of the United States, even that would somehow become a political issue. But Disney used to be a thing everyone loved. No controversy. They actually had these rare, unusual things in the United States. Nowadays, it's unusual to hear these words. They're called morals, values, and lessons. One of the most famous ones, perhaps, being the Bare Necessities song from the Jungle Book, where they talk about the bare necessities, which most Americans nowadays have no idea what they are. Another lesson for another time, but shortly said, they're things you don't need. There are bare necessities, although if they were to remake that film now, the bear in the film would not be a bear that comes from a zoo. I shall not elaborate more since I know perhaps there are some youngins listening. But it's one of those instances where nowadays Disney has become so political, they're pushing so much, maybe we call propaganda, that's dividing their audience completely. They're inserting overt sexual themes into children's materials. Things that are not acceptable for, I would say, any age below 18, depending on your philosophy on when you introduce topics to kids. And some topics I don't think you should ever introduce, depending on what they are. Another topic for another time, perhaps. But they're so disconnected, they're losing money on these programs. That's why they're canceling them. If you're making money on a program, you very rarely ever cancel it. Maybe once in a blue moon, if there's a controversy with the main actor or actress in the film or the series or the movie, you might cancel it. Or if there's a big controversy around the topic of the film and something happens unrelated, or rather a third party does something and you might not think it's tasteful. You might reminisce about George Carlin and people dying in planes. He was about to release his special, he's a comedian, around 9/11. And because of how it would not be tasteful, even though he wasn't talking about that specific event, they were somewhat correlated, so he chose not to release it. I was going to say apples to orange perhaps, but conceptually, there's these things where they're releasing these out, and just more and more, they're inserting political, maybe I would say morally vacuous things. And the audience is aware of that. That's right, they've lost about $2 billion on movies this year. It's a company that used to print money, basically, when it came to film and TV, now they're bleeding. Not just, not just their stock, but fiscally speaking as well, they're losing money. Disney Plus still hasn't shown a profit, which again, over time, things do become profitable if you're doing the right things. Tesla perhaps being the most famous examples. And Disney Plus still isn't there yet. And the streaming wars are in full throttle. Every business, every media company has a streaming service. And Disney might actually have to sell some assets if they want to see this come to fruition. But culturally speaking, the disconnect is getting worse, not better. There are people who are proud to work as Disney as activists. And they haven't fired those people. Quite the opposite, they're empowering them. So from a cultural perspective, they're becoming more and more disconnected with what the mass audience wants. And their sales are going to keep going down lower and lower. And given who's working there and their belief systems, I don't think it's going to stop. They're shooting themselves in the foot, but not learning a lesson. It's like the kid who puts the hand down on the stove. Usually, the kid will learn the lesson after one burn. You put the hand on, parents say, the stove is hot, don't touch it. Of course, they're curious, they touch it, it burns their hand. Most of them would understand from that lesson, okay, now I know for sure that bad thing will happen. Disney, it's like Mickey Mouse took off the glove and just stuck it on the stove and is leaving it there, and it's just frying more and more and more, which would smell pretty bad because, of course, Mickey Mouse is a rat or a mouse. So I dare not fathom that smell. But that smell perhaps could be a good metaphor of what Disney has now become. And let me know in the comments, do you think long term will this current administration with Bob Iger leading the company again, with the current people working there, will they keep going down this path? If they do, will that ever become profitable? How many decades of change would it take in terms of the United States demographic changes? Will it take? A lot of people argue the pendulum swings back and forth between different political issues and demographics. Well, if it doesn't ever swing back and the United States keeps going down the track now, it might become profitable. But again, you're talking about a multi-decade initiative. So let me know in the comments, will they keep down this path, or will they finally change and get rid of the politics from their content? It's one of those things where I'm glad I'm not buying their stock. And again, I'm not giving any financial advice. Their stock is, I think, near a 52-week low. It's close to a 10-year low a couple weeks ago. Needless to say, I'm not giving any financial advice about Disney. I'm just glad I did not personally invest. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking the time to tune in today. Also, I know we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September, so if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to take the time to like and comment the video. I really appreciate your feedback, whether you're on the front line of the UAW or in the corporate office at Ford. Your feedback makes the show much more interesting and is able to make me update the videos with even more data, and it really helps it, I think, make a better experience. And also, the feedback improves the show because thanks to the comments, I realize I need to actually work on my enunciation as well as my articulation and slowing down a little bit when I'm speaking. So together, we're going to make the show together that much better, and I greatly appreciate your participants. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.